gunshot thing, but no, cause like once he shot him, you saw it go through him. I watched the interview and shit.
When the queen bitch finds out about this, she's gonna flip her shit.
Rachel and I, we know each other.
Sir?
That's the one I played.
The queen bitch you're referring to is his wife. Nice work, Hotshot.
Ashley Tisdale, welcome. Now, Ashley plays Rachel in Supermassive
Oh, she
Games'
plays
Dark
Rachel?
Pictures Anthology's House of Ashes. All right, Ashley, what can you tell me about your
Ashley.
character?
My character, Rachel, is a CIA
She's like a
operative,
little person.
and is taken place in 2003
voice.
in the Gulf War. And
Rachel.
she is on a mission to find chemical weapons.
I never know
So
you either.
she's pretty badass.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is your first time doing a video game.
This is my first time, yeah.
Wow. So how does that
Yeah.
process compare to maybe the stuff that you've done, on camera before?
I think that it's
This is
just
her first video
very
game she did?
obviously a different
Like voice?
approach to it. I do a lot of voiceover for animation series, so I would say it's more in line with that because you're in a studio all day and it's like you and the script and then also like some of the other characters, but it's just like kind of going through it really fast
The eyebrows,
versus,
or whatever.
one scene on a TV show or a movie could take like an hour to 2 hours. So you're constantly going
Yeah.
through it. It's a really long
I do remember them
process,
saying that in the beginning,
but
the first
it's cool.
one.
It's different. You're wearing like heavy machinery on your head, and it's like getting all of
Yeah.
your facial expressions. So it's pretty
So that
crazy.
vampire
You'll
one
just
is
be
one
like
of the.
completely like so muscular by the time you're
things.
done. Your neck will be
My
holding
neck
this-
is super strong.
yeah, the strongest neck ever now.
Yeah.
And how do you prepare for something like
Yeah,
that? That
that's
I feel
dope.
like is the script
Jigsaw
is
one's
not
gonna
maybe
be fun
necessarily
as hell,
prepared
though.
for particular scenes. Everything it's so
really
varied. Like,
can't
how do,
wait
how
for
do you
that one.
really kind of get ready for it?
I pretty much, obviously read the script beforehand, but I don't spend a lot of time on it like I would another script, like either with a movie or a TV, because it's the same thing of how I approach animations, is that I know when I'm
I don't even know if
here,
the live stream can
I'm
see
going to
this.
be with the director, and they're going to have me do it like multiple different ways because there is multiple different directions the character can go. So if I were to fully prepare, I would maybe like put myself in this like, well,
Yeah,
it's
you
got to be this way, and I want to
You're
feel
welcome.
free to like be able to have them say, do it more sympathetic and do it more angry, and so I kind of don't fully prepare. I just know who the character
Yeah.
is, and as long as I know the intention of what I'm saying, then I'm good.
What is it?
The guy who served me. I
Damn.
don't know. He was looking at me pretty strange.
Probably doesn't get to see a woman like you around these parts very often.
All three of them, or what?
Especially one that showered.
But with any series or,
Oh.
or film, there's just that one linear path for your character.
Yeah.
And with this, you have the option of
There's
living out
many
the
different
multiple-
arcs.
Damn, bro.
Yeah, how do you kind of keep it all straight or keep it, a
Good thing we
continuity
didn't go
with
with
your
you
character
saying,
through
bro.
all that?
Honestly, I don't even
it's
remember
crazy.
half of it. I think it's just obviously relying on the director. And the guys at Supermassive, they're just really great at knowing where we are in the storyline. And so it's just heavily trusting them.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
And then, just kind of knowing, that it's
The way
just
they
going to
did
go.
and how,
I
like,
can't,
people
like, there's
know
just so
what
many
direction they're
different
gonna go to,
areas
like,
that it can go.
if you're gonna
And
die
I
away.
could die in one of the things, and I could become a vampire. I can, like, live.
Oh
It's
yeah,
just,
you
like,
see,
it's
you
so
can be
crazy
hitting right in the
how
dark, bro. It
opposite.
was a vampire. She said that it's a vampire.
It's got to be interesting too to think that someone's gonna like play you
That's like
in
a
a game,
no-brainer,
and
bro.
then maybe
Yeah,
you'll
scared of the
die or you'll
fucking
live or you'll
Yeah.
like
sun
the
and
people
then
will be in
stabbing him
control
in the
of your future.
I know. I think it's gonna be really crazy just
Yeah.
seeing my face on like the character. Like that's gonna be so wild. It's so crazy
They
how
fucked
far
up her
video
face,
games
dude.
have
Her
come
eyes.
so much more cinematic and like the movies that it's pretty wild. It's like beautiful to watch, but it's gonna be crazy.
Now, I guess we have a couple rapid fire questions that I'd like to hit you with
Rapid
as
fire
well.
questions.
Okay, ready for this?
I'm
Okay,
ready.
so bitten by a vampire or buried alive?
Oof. Yeah, bitten by a vampire.
Oh, really?
Well, then you get to live forever, so
That is true.
What
Okay,
am I never
thought
thought of that, bro?
that
What the hell?
element of it. Things that you've shot so far. Do you have a favorite scene?
I think my favorite scene would have to be probably early on between
Yeah.
Rachel and her husband. It's a flashback, and it's them in the car. And it's a
Yeah.
moment in time that kind of changes everything. And what I love about it is that it really shows who Rachel was and how it changed her to become who she is today. there's just
Oh,
so
wow,
much
wait a
happening
minute.
in the game that it's just like a moment where it's just like really kind of
Did you
stripped
see
down
Rachel like
and one
get out from a bar?
and I think it's a really beautiful scene.
Oh, okay, yeah.
What is
Like
it?
drive-through shit.
The guy who served me.
Like
I don't know. He was looking at me pretty strange.
You know, my sole objective, Rach,
not a
is to
bar,
make
like
you
one of
happy.
those inns, not
Doesn't
inns.
matter where we
fucking-
are or what we're going through.
like an
I'll
old
always put a
ass
smile on your face.
place where you can eat.
See, I told you.
So how do you get into that? Because I feel like, you know, it's sometimes it's such a sudden change.
It might be one
from
of the
one scene
ends
to the next.
because
How
it
do you
says
kinda
look
really
like
get into that
Eric
moment so
and
quickly?
I think how
Rachel
we've done
together.
it is that we would start off with the earlier stuff, so
Okay.
Yeah.
it's kind of like you're building to the bigger pieces. And
Oh, really?
yeah, usually the end of the day we'll have like the biggest stuff, whether that's us
Yeah, so maybe
screaming
if
and
we
fighting,
kept them all
because
alive, that
it
would have
obviously
happened.
drains
Yeah.
us and our vocals. So you know they know to kind of like have us do the whole like action stuff at the very end
Oh,
of the
wow.
day.
They're breaking through the perimeter.
You got any bright ideas? Now's the time.
Oh yeah, fucking Rachel could use a Gatling gun on the vampires, dude. Doesn't look like it working though. Or maybe it is. Yeah, it's pushing it back.
Being like, okay, now we're gonna be sweet, and now we're gonna be screaming.
It's
and then
hard
you're
to
gonna be
go
dying,
backwards,
and then you're gonna be
yeah.
back alive again, and this is a touching moment, and you're gonna die. Yeah, and the first time is gonna be like a strange experience, kind of going off on your own and acting out that kind of separate.
Yeah, it's definitely a very interesting process to watch, and it's different from anything I've ever done.
Has it been hard to navigate doorways with the camera on? Like, do you find? Your...
Oh, no, I take them off right away.
Okay.
Anytime I can get a break, because it is a heavy thing, and so it's just like most of the time I'm sitting on the couch with it, like holding the helmet up, because it's like, you know, it's like a weight on your head, so
yeah.
it's pretty crazy.
It's expensive equipment. You don't want to like bang it on a door frame.
No.
Well, now that they've got you in the game, they can put you in anything.
I know. I'm so excited because I've never been able to play something like this.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. Cool.
Thank you.
Oh, is this the underwater thing you were talking about with the statue? Yeah. Whenever you were down in the cave. Oh. Yeah, blood water? Yeah, that's the thing. Good. Mm-hmm.
The creature has powerful claws.
I'm watching that
and
monster
fangs
tank.
formed from hardened and identifiable tissue. Two of the incisors appear grossly malformed and discolored. Blood is like nothing I've seen.
I'm
We always
watching it
like
right
to
now.
base our stories in some sort of real-world truth, a piece of
The game
folklore, a piece of mythology.
director.
With vampires, obviously, there's so much to choose from cultures all the way around the
Yeah.
world. So rather than pick one particular legend, we thought it would
Oh,
be
yeah, we
fun
would
to
see that
create
flaming
a
dude on
monster
fire,
that
dude.
ties all of those legends together in some way. So we had an idea for a creature that lives underneath the ground and emerges every few years. Our vampire is actually an alien parasite. It invades a host body. The creatures that you see in House of
Whenever I
Ashes, the
touch the
winged
statue,
demonic creatures,
Buggity.
were actually once a intelligent race of cosmic nomads traveling through the stars on this big generation ship. They somehow picked up this alien parasite and it ravaged through their crew, and their ship went out of control and crash landed into prehistoric Earth, where it was buried under the ground in what is now the Zagros Mountains. Being a parasite, this alien slug needs to find a host body, a living body or a recently dead one. Once it invades that body, it grows
yeah,
inside
fucking the
it,
dude
killing
comes up.
the host if host
Goddamn.
is still alive.
Oh,
And
damn.
its tendrils sort of reach out
Damn, he's
into the
knocking him
host's
out, bro.
brain and hijack its central nervous system, sort of reanimating it.
Alright.
It then goes on the hunt for blood.
Damn, we got
It
crushed.
feeds on the adrenaline in blood. So in order to get the adrenaline pumping, it needs to terrify its prey. So it shrieks at them and drags the kill out until
Yeah.
the blood is really, really pumping, and then it strikes.
You keep lookout. Fuck!
Look out for what?
We wanted to show the
Whatever, she
viewer
just got
different
dragged,
forms
like,
of the
no.
creature, and make him think that initially it's a demon, then they think that it's a vampire, and then finally the revelation that it's an alien.
Oh, yeah.
So just to explain where the parasites have come to infect some of our game characters.
Oh, what the hell?
This
That's
shows
pretty
a game character who's going through different stages, is infected, starts to affect the character, and there's a final look from that where the fangs are coming through the skull. So that's one of the developments of how our classic vampire is actually a host. Another example of that is an Akkadian warrior who's been taken over by the parasite, and again the fangs have come through, the vines are poking through the head.
Usain Bolt running,
This
bro.
human is now being taken over, his skin is dying, the parasite is trying to grow within. But we progress that into looking at the design on the alien demon, I call it. This had to have very unique elements that came through from the head design. So we've got a very animalistic head here, but also we've got the fangs. These fangs are coming from the parasite that's within, so the fangs are coming
That's
through.
cool.
It's almost deforming the shape of the host.
Oh, shit. What the fuck happened to your teeth, buddy?
We refined that further to what is our final head, where the ear is a part of the skull and it flexes open. A bit like a frill lizard, where the frill of the canopy comes out, our head is actually moving apart. And we've got illustrations that show that, where the head is dormant and is concealed, but then as it hears and wants to resonate, the skull expands open. And that then allows the creature to hear and pick up on anything within the environment.
With characters, it's always good to base at least some of it on anatomy that we recognise, and that provides a foundation for the vampire. It's bipedal and human in its structure, but we've just changed things, tweaked them, made them a bit more alien. So, for example, the ribs joined together at the sternum to form a rib cage, but we've expanded it out quite a lot, and some of the ribs are fused together to make bony plates. It's just to suggest that it's had a very different evolution from a human. We tried a version with human-style legs, but in the end, we went for a dog-type leg.
A human-style
just made it
leg?
more creature-like and more threatening. And we added bird-like talons on the toes, just to give it some natural weapons and make it into a predator. We didn't want to focus too much on bat reference, because we were trying to steer away a bit from the classic bat-like vampire. We did go for 2 sets of bat-like wings. One of the shots in the game is of the vampire jumping down from above, backlit with its wings out in an attack pose. And when we saw that pose, we decided to add an extra set of wings attached at the hip joint. It just really helped that silhouette.
The environment is very interesting because they can use not just the floor, they can fly as well. They can walk on the walls, but they've got claws. So imagine something really interesting in a cave where you've got creatures coming towards you, from every angle. I think that visually is something impactful and very interesting to look at, and scary.
That's very true.
One of the interesting
The one he said
parts
it's
is
scary that all the
finding
fucking
of
creatures
those
like crawling
nuances
up
and
walls coming at
details
you.
That
Instead of
really
just running
bring
up on
the
you like
character
that.
to life. How does it move? How does it behave and act? We had motion capture, and then we had the more traditional computer animation keyframing. On the motion capture side, there were a variety of different setups that we tested. We had arm extensions.
That man crawling, bro.
And then we had various different leg stilts that our creature actor used. But what was apparent when filming this was that it really limited his movement. So in the end, we decided not to use any of that, and he just performed himself. Basically, this gave him the freedom to really express that physicality in acting and gesture.
They react to sound like bats. They hear you. They hunt you.
The vampires have these head plates, these bony kind of gristly structures on their heads that click and vibrate, kind of like a bat's echolocation. They're used to survey environments and to locate prey. We went through a lot of different iterations and we tried a lot of different things. Like I think I sampled keyboards and mouse clicks and then used a scooter fender and a wet trainer. And it made this organic, clicky, squeaky sound. And then I had a friend of mine, like in the States, take a taser to a bunch of meat and a bunch of like organic material. And it came out a lot more aggressive. It just sounded meaner.
I got something for you!
And then the biggest thing that we had was this little tiny drum and a rod with fishing line in between it. So when you twisted a rod, it made this clicking and popping sound. So that ended up being one of the main tonal layers for it. But none of them quite fit right. But once we put them all together and like layered them all together on top of each other. Then it started to actually work as a holistic, organic thing.
Something entirely new to House of Ashes, which is a classic horror movie trope, is the vampire point of view shots, which we use a very wide lens and we use some perspective distortion on those shots, which helps sell the power and hunger of the vampires as they're chasing the soldiers, and it helps make the soldiers feel very small and very weak. And doing so, it also helps us as the player realise that these vampires are inhuman, and that when we're watching what they're doing, they're bouncing off of walls and they're climbing on the ceilings and flying. At any time in the game, the players could be running through an endless maze of tunnels, and we use very tight shots on these with a lot of handheld, a lot of tilt again, to emphasise this claustrophobicness and this tension and not being able to see what's chasing them. And it's in complete contrast then to later on in the game where we see these grand environments that they uncover, which could be a temple, a city, or things like that, that we have these wide shots that really sit still and just let the player soak in that environment.
Too much, bro.
This is the most complex creature that we have ever animated in the studio. But the challenge is more than a challenge, is the fun to do it. Because it's not a real creature. You can push it in a way that you can use your imagination to make it more interesting.
We're facing an enemy we know zero about. An enemy of unknown size on their home turf. Sucks to be us.
Damn. Now, part 1. Let's see what this is.
September the 24th, 1945. When Lady Bradshaw summons you, you go. Mary and I were bound for a honeymoon, but the chance to dine with one of Britain's finest antiquarians was too great for us to miss. When we met, Bradshaw wore a brooch that caught Mary's eye. A Sumerian relic recovered from a dig site in the Hashemite kingdom of Iraq. After dinner, she showed us another find from the same site, a gold cuneiform tablet. She called it the final puzzle piece in her life's work, a map that pinpoints the tomb of Alexander the Great. If she's right, the tomb lies somewhere on the border of Iraq. Lady Bradshaw wants us to lead her expedition. I realize now that our honeymoon will take place in a dusty dig site in the Zagros Mountains. April the 2nd, 1946. We have assembled our team. Top of my list was my old comrade from the wars, Captain Sherman Crow, the bulldog of Omaha Beach. We found him in Cairo, brawling for money in a Levantine drinking club. Crow recommended an experienced dig foreman, Arthur Pullman. And in Haifa, we picked up my assistant, always inquisitive Aline Jean. Lady Bradshaw insisted on the presence of her own advisor, Ellis van Hoyten, an archaeologist I know only from his poor reputation. Our team complete, we shall head to the Lebanon, and from there by train to Baghdad. October the 21st, 1946. Crow was the first to break into the tomb, an honor he shared with Bessie, that damned machine gun of his. It was a beast of a weapon, but it seemed to comfort the fellaheen doing the digging. This place has lain undisturbed for centuries. It is not the tomb of Alexander the Great, but a temple of an even older god king, the Akkadian despot, Naram Sin. We have been mistaken, but Lady Bradshaw still declares it a find for the ages, a discovery that will write our names in the annals of history. Looking out at this sceptred hall, I have no reason to doubt her. The catacombs beneath the temple are heaped with human bones. Aline has worked sacrificial digs near El Castillo, but even she hasn't seen death on this scale before. The Akkadians killed thousands in the name of their gods. Most ritually decapitated, but others crudely slain and dumped in charnel pits, as though the slaughter had spiraled out of control. What plague or cataclysm demanded such a price? So much blood spilled. And for what? Whatever happened here millennia ago, it is a secret waiting to be discovered. Our work begins in earnest.
This is where things turn to shit.
7th of December, 1946. Our finds have been so spectacular, I couldn't resist breaking out with champagne. As I entered the survey tent to pour a glass for Mary, I realized something was awry. She'd found Bradshaw's crate of dynamite. I tried to calm her, but she worked up a full head of steam, sounding off about the risks of using explosives at a dig site. She was right, of course. I feel terrible for hiding it from her. Just then, Crow arrived and picked up the dynamite. When Mary ordered him to put it down, he looked her boldly in the eye and said they'd found something below.
Now this is where
The bottom of the chasm stank of death and was littered with corpses, fresh enough to be covered in flies. Crow thinks that local bandits must have tossed their victims down here after robbing them. I pity those hapless wanderers. The fear they must have felt as they tumbled to their doom. But this was not what he wanted to show us. An unearthly light pierced the rocks. When Mary asked us what it was, Bradshaw nodded to Crow, who broke open the dynamite. She said she intended to find out. Blowing a hole through the rock face, we found a gateway to a strange world below. A phosphorescence emanated from beneath, casting its eldritch light over us all. Lady Bradshaw was insistent that we descend further. Perhaps Mary is right, and Bradshaw is becoming reckless and uncontrollable. But I can't stop thinking about what's down there. I am now working with Crow and Pullman to set up a winch and elevator to descend into the shaft. What mysteries lie below, I wonder, undisturbed by the world above. "13th of December. Crow, Bradshaw, and I descended in the elevator. As we left, I was struck by the change in Bradshaw's temperament. She seemed eager, almost manic in the face of our new discovery. When we reached the bottom, Crow could not prevent himself from letting loose an oath. There before us, set in a dizzying vault, lay a city. It was loathsome, colossal, and sleeping. A great carcass built in some ancient age before men. Overcome with awe, I fell to my knees. "28th of December. God forgive us. For days we have studied this dead, silent realm and its entombed abominations. Now the horrors have come for my own dear Mary. Crow found her unconscious in the Star Chamber, her notes scattered around her. He carried her back to our supply room and laid her down in one of the cells. When Bradshaw learned what had happened, she was evasive about Mary's work down there. As I cleaned my wife's face, she spoke to me in a fever, sounding distressed and confused. I have resolved to keep a vigil over her. I pray her fever abates so we can escape this cursed place.
Damn, I can't watch part 2. 6 out of 10. That's the outside. This one's a new one. Yeah, this is the new one. Wait, where'd my thing go? Yeah, the one we saw about the dude turning on the lighter. That's the new one. This is a surrender we did. Comrades, I just wanna read through that shit and then what's up? We're only missing 4. Those visions.